was a war of words tonight over religion at the Des Moines Airport Holiday Inn. Speakers held a conference to warn people about what they say is the threat that Islam poses to the United States. Protesters, including local Muslims, say that message isn't welcome here. Channel 13's Mike DeSilva reports.
My issue with Islam, well, all you gotta do is read the Quran, and most Americans haven't.
Brendan House, an author and radio broadcaster, goes around the country trying to teach Americans about Islam and the Quran, and the threat he believes the religion and its holy book poses to America.
Because if you read it for yourself, you'll see what the issues are. The disrespect for women, the disrespect for the Jewish people, the disrespect for Christians, the disrespect for freedom of speech.
John Guandolo, president of Understanding the Threat, spoke to the crowd about terms like Sharia and Jihad, and how he says they're dangerous. But local Muslim leader Akayu Abdul Samad says the meaning of those words can be interpreted in different ways and have been misunderstood by many.
The jihad that we talk about in the Quran, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, said very clearly that the jihad is the jihad of nafs, which means the jihad of self. Your jihad is within you, and every religion has a jihad.
That's absolutely not true. In Islam, there's only one legal definition for jihad, and that's warfare against non-Muslims.
Well, let's just start with that. What I said for the TV interview, I'll reiterate. There is no other legal definition of jihad except warfare against non-Muslims, and I challenge Mr. Akayo Abdul Samad to find one anywhere. And the question is, where is it taught? Where is his mystical version of Islam taught? Because when we, understanding the threat, and when I teach about Islam, I am teaching using the books they use inside mosques and Islamic schools all over America. So that means what he's saying is every mosque and Islamic school in America is getting their version of Islam wrong, teaching that jihad is warfare against non-Muslims, that it's an obligation for Muslims, it's one of the 3 duties of Muslims, to wage jihad. So what is he talking about here? I will also note that Mr. Abdul Samad hugged Abshir Omar there in the long orange outfit, who was the former president of Hamas in Iowa, CARE, doing business as CARE. And you'll see here in a minute, he mentions and supports CARE. But let's go on. This is going to be a fun video. Now, what's interesting is the news station, actually, you can see it on their website here, they actually give the raw footage of the interview for Akayo Abdul Samad, who is a state legislator in Iowa, a Sharia adherent Muslim. And you can see it right there, but they did a 10, 12-minute interview with me, and you don't see my answers there. And you'll hear from the interviewer's question, Mike DeSilva, that he is slanted and biased towards the jihadi.
It does bother me, because what it does is perpetuate hate. It perpetuates misinformation. It causes individuals that have no knowledge of the Islamic religion to get a one-sided view and to create a fear in those individuals.
So he's afraid people who listen to Understanding the Threat are going to get a one-sided view. Again, I would ask him, name something specific. We made it very clear, and Mr. Akayo Abdul Samad was in the audience. Understanding the Threat has a standing offer. Show us something we're teaching about Sharia that's not true. We'll remove it from our materials and give the person bringing it to our attention $1,000. After the presentation, he did not come up to me and try to get his $1,000. He left because he knew we were hitting pay dirt. We were using the Quran. We were using the Hadith, the authoritative biography of the Prophet Muhammad. We were using the Tafsir, which legally defines every verse in the Quran, and we were using the most widely used textbook in U.S. Islamic schools for 7th graders, and it all teaches the exact same thing.
Because it seems like they're conflating, like they mention terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, But of course, it's, they're very general when they use the word Islam. So do you think that that's a problem where people sometimes, lump in together, Muslims with radical Islamic terrorists?
I would ask Mike De Silva, what Islamic law have you read? And the answer would be zero. And I learned that from my discussions with him because it was based on his questions. And the question's here. He starts out with the premise that what we're saying simply can't be true. And here's the question I would raise. Please demonstrate where Al-Qaeda and ISIS have misquoted Islamic law in furtherance of what they do. Just one example. Putting someone in a cage and setting them on fire, lawful under Islam. Any others? Crucifixion, lawful. Beheading, lawful. Killing people who refuse to convert or submit to Islam, lawful. It's required. It's in the Quran. It's in the Hadith. It's in the example of Prophet Muhammad. I want to know, what version of Islam are you expecting Muslims to follow? There's the Quran, and then there's Muhammad, his example. He tortured people. He captured sex slaves. He authorized people to be killed that mocked him. He participated in executing Jews. The Quran says, last, Surah 9, with regard to jihad, fight and slay the unbelievers wherever you find them. What exactly are we talking about here? Why can't we simply have an honest discussion about what Islam is and what it teaches? Which is why they teach it at the 1st grade, at the 7th grade, at the 10th grade, and at Al-Azhar University.
Because my understanding of the Holy Quran is that we don't take innocent life.
I'd like to know from Mr. Abdul Samad, what exactly is he talking about? My interpretation of the Quran? There is no such thing in Islam. And for those of you that do not understand, Islam is a totalitarian system governed by law. That law is called Sharia. This, which I showed when Mr. Samad was sitting in the audience, is the tafsir. This is the most authoritative tafsir in Islam, Tafsir Ibn Kathir, which this is 1 volume in a 10-volume set that legally defines every verse in the Quran. And I had somebody open up to where verse 9:5 is defined, which is fight and slay the unbeliever wherever you find them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war. And it says right there, this is the ayah of the sword. It's the verse of the sword. And what does it say? Fight the unbeliever wherever you find them means on the earth in general. Capture them means executing some, keeping some as prisoners. Besiege them and lie in wait for them in each and every ambush means, so you all can see it right there. Can you read it? Do not wait until you find them. Rather, seek and besiege them in their areas and forts. Gather intelligence about them in various roads and fairways, so that what is made wide looks even smaller to them. This way they will have no choice but to die or embrace Islam. This is taught at the Islamic Center of Des Moines. It's on their calendar. Tafsir classes. What do you think? Why would they teach it? Because it's required in Islam that the Quran is understood the way the scholars understand it. Mr. Abdul Samad knows there's no such thing as my version of Islam in Islam. That's why in the 7th grade textbook, What Islam is All About, the most widely used textbook in Islamic schools in the United States, on page 2, it says Islam is not a religion, however, but a complete way of life. And then, of course, later it says governed by Sharia.
There seems to be a lot of debate and controversy surrounding the term Sharia and Sharia law. Some people think Sharia law is not consistent with the Constitution or Western civilization. How do you view all that?
We're taught in Islam that whatever country you're in, that's the law and the Constitution you obey, unless it goes against the will of God.
So Mr. Abdul Samad is saying that in Islam, Muslims are taught that you obey the law of the land. That is what we call a lie. He's lying. How do we know he lies? Well, besides the fact all Islamic doctrine says it is obligatory to make Islam dominant on the earth. Sharia is meant to be the law of the land everywhere. The entire purpose of Islam is to eliminate all places where Sharia is not the law of the land, and the vehicle to do it is called jihad. But the best way to exemplify this is looking at the most widely used textbook in Islamic junior high schools, what Islam is all about. And let's go back to where they talk about the government in the back here, and let's see what it says. The way of Islam, the way of life known as Islam, is a complete code of life. The basis of the legal and political system is the Sharia of Allah. Wow, that's exactly not what the Iowa state legislator just said to the news media, because he was lying. And right here, it says, let me just bring it right up to you. Can you read that? The duty of the Muslim citizen is to be loyal to the Islamic State. That's exactly opposite of what he just said. Now, why would they teach seventh graders in Islamic schools all over the United States exactly the opposite of what this Iowa state legislator just said? Maybe because he's lying. Well, now why would he do that? Well, we have this book of Islamic law right here, Reliance of the Traveler, 14th century Islamic law published in Beltsville, Maryland. And let's see what it says in Book R, Section 8. Let's see. Lying. Permissible lying. Everybody see that? It is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible, and obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. Do you know how I know that Mr. Abdul Samad is lying? Because his lips are moving, and he's a Sharia adherent Muslim, and he's in a position of authority. So he knows this. We know he knows this. Isn't that interesting? Now, those of you who want to say, oh, you can't say he's lying, you don't know that. Well, here's what I can say. 100% true. What he just said is not true. Islam doesn't teach what he just said. And here's $1,000 waiting for him if he can name one authoritative book of Islamic law or one seventh grade textbook in Islamic schools that teaches what he's saying is true. And a reminder to all of you out there that have never read one sentence of Islamic law, it is a capital crime in Islam for a Muslim to teach another Muslim anything about Islam that's not true. It's part of the law of apostasy.
We don't want to kill people of Israel. We're not anti-Semitic. We're not anti-Jewish. But those are things that will be perpetuated tonight, at an event. That's not who we are.
So he says, that's not who we are. We don't want to kill Jews. But yet, Islam teaches that their prophet Muhammad is the perfect example of a man. He's the al-insan al-kamil. And the Quran says that he is a beautiful pattern of conduct for all Muslims to follow for all times. And the most authoritative hadith scholar, Bukhari, hadith 2926, says the prophet Muhammad himself said that the day of judgment will not come until the Muslims kill the Jews, until the Jews hide behind the rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees cry out, "O Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him."
No, there's not a Muslim that I know. And we have over 8 mosques here in Des Moines itself. We have different Islamic organizations from CARE to AMA that no one is trying to push Sharia law.
Well, I'm glad you brought Hamas into the picture. Thank you very much, State Representative Abdul Samad. Good luck with that in Iowa, having a jihadi as a state legislator, but I digress. So he brings up Hamas, CARE, Hamas doing business as CARE, and says, nobody's advocating Sharia. Really? The Islamic Center of Des Moines is owned by the North American Islamic Trust, which the Muslim Brotherhood documents retrieved by the FBI in a 2004 raid in Annandale, Virginia, identify that as a Muslim Brotherhood organization. The government, meaning NATE, North American Islamic Trust, the bank for the Muslim Brotherhood, the U.S. government identifies NATE as a Muslim Brotherhood organization, and the U.S. government identifies Nate as providing money directly to Hamas leaders and Hamas organizations overseas in violation of federal law, and they own the Islamic Center of Des Moines. And their documents say that the purpose of the Muslim Brotherhood is to establish Allah's law in the land. Now, I'm going to give Mr. Abdul Samad the benefit of the doubt that maybe he's just ignorant of all this, but CARE is the Muslim Brotherhood, Nate's the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamic Center of Des Moines is the Muslim Brotherhood, and they absolutely, all of their documents advocate for Sharia being established in the United States.
You know, you don't have Sharia law in the world today.
Did he just say we don't have Sharia law in the world today? Where to begin? Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Indonesia. Let's just look all over the Muslim world. What law do you think? What's in the Constitution in Egypt? Sharia is the law of the land in constitutions in Islamic countries. And by the way, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the largest voting bloc in the world at the United Nations, the Cairo Declaration says their only understanding of human rights is as prescribed by Sharia. In an official document voted on by the head of state of every Muslim country, 57 states, 56 nations plus Palestinian territories, and served to the United Nations in 1993. So what he is saying is just factually not true. And quite frankly, makes me concerned for his mental well-being, that he thinks there's no Sharia law in the land. But why wouldn't he lie about that? He's a Sharia adherent Muslim.
Like I said, we as a Muslim, I may disagree with the individuals tonight, but I don't disagree because of who they are. I disagree of what they're actually projecting, you know, and what they're trying to teach other people, because it's false. You know, and if I can use, I guess the term that everybody says today is fake news. You know, totally. You know, you couldn't get more fake news than what's getting ready to happen tonight.
Fake news? Okay. Well, the $1,000 on the table there, Abdul Samad. Which part of what we said is the Quran, not the uncreated word of Allah? Is abrogation, meaning what comes chronologically last in the Quran, does it not legally overrule when there's a contradiction what comes before it? Is Surah or chapter 9 not the last chapter chronologically in the Quran to talk about jihad? In Surah 9, does it not say, fight and slay the unbelievers wherever you find them and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war? Does the tafsir not legally define every verse in the Quran? Does it in fact say that he beheaded up to 900 Jews after the Battle of the Trench? Set a fire on the chest of Kanani, the Jew, when they were trying to find out where they were keeping the treasure. And when he refused, Muhammad stood right next to him and ordered him beheaded. True or false? Is Muhammad the most perfect example for all Muslims for all times? Yes or no? The Quran says it multiple times. What part of what we're teaching is untrue? Did the Prophet Muhammad say, I've been commanded to fight the unbelievers till they testified there's no God but Allah? Did Muhammad actually go out and fight dozens of battles against pagans and non-Muslims, kill Christians and Jews? Yes or no? Is that not a command for all time? Did Muhammad actually authorize people to be killed who mocked him? Did the Prophet Muhammad marry a 6-year-old, consummate the relationship when she was 9? How is all of this not good behavior for all Muslims for all time? So please, what specifically is it we're teaching that's not true?
Don't let people tell you something who aren't even Muslim about Muslims.
I see. So because I'm not a Muslim, I can't read authoritative English translation of Sharia. I can't read authoritative English translation of tafsir, of the biography of the Prophet Muhammad, of Sahih Bukhari, the most authoritative hadith. Is that what we're saying?
As misinformed and as misleading as they may be, do you think they have the right to gather and assemble at the hotel?
Mike De Silva, the puppet of the jihadis. Very well done. Again, Mike, what is it that I said? And I noticed, by the way, you and your cameraman left about 5 minutes into my presentation. You didn't stay to listen to the facts that we were laying out, reading from authoritative Islamic doctrine. Mike, question 1, what Islamic law have you read? 0, you don't have to answer. Number 2, by the way, if you understand that Islamic law mandates Muslims to lie to non-Muslims, Muslims adhering to Sharia, which Mr. Abdul Samad is a Sharia adherent Muslim, he's obliged to lie to non-Muslims to further Islam. 100% of Islamic law mandates it. Well, because the Prophet Muhammad himself said it. So, if you are only using a Sharia adherent Muslim as your sole source for what Islam is, that's called unprofessional.
But the key is Muslims now must step up and tell their story. Are we going to be reactionary to this situation tonight? Probably so. Will we end up holding our own event to teach people about Islam and what's going to happen? Probably so. Starting, in fact, next Wednesday, our Democratic caucus, Representative Liz Bennett and Representative Mary Masher, have been doing lunch and learns, on different issues in the community. Next Wednesday, we're going to do it on the Islamic religion.
No surprise there. Democrats are going to teach Islam at an official function. Weird. Wonder if they're going to teach about Jesus Christ being the Lord and Savior of the universe. The Marxist movement in the United States and the Marxist Party in the United States, also known as the Democrat Party, working with jihadis, working with Sharia adherent Muslims to propel their propaganda. What else do we know about Iowa State Legislator Akeo Abdul Samad? Well, we know he's the chairman of the American Muslim Alliance. And what is that? Well, that's a jihadi organization here in the United States. Its founder is actually a jihadi who supports Hamas, has gone on record defending known terrorists like Sami al-Arian and others. But one of the most interesting things is in 2000, the AMA hosted a rally just outside in eyeshot of the White House where Al-Qaeda financier Abdul Rahman al-Amoudi spoke. And, Mr. Abdul Samad's organization sponsored that event where he said, it was said that they support terrorist groups Hamas and Hezbollah, and everyone was cheering. And the American Muslim Alliance never recanted that, never said, hey, we're sorry that our speakers supported terrorists. But then again, Omar Mateen's father was the leader of the American Muslim Alliance in Fort Pierce, Florida. Isn't that weird? Turns out, he supports jihad. And why wouldn't he? He's part of the American Muslim Alliance, and we have a state legislator in Iowa who's running the organization, and apparently the people in Iowa and the law enforcement in Iowa think that's okay. After my presentation on April 5th in Des Moines, Iowa, a gentleman who was in the audience came up to me, a local Muslim leader named Abshir Omar, Somali Muslim, who, by the way, is the former, according to his own bio and newspaper reports, the former president of Hamas, doing business as CARE in Iowa, came up and was very pleasant. We had a nice, long, 25-minute cordial conversation, which he thanked me for being so kind and cordial. And we discussed Islam. And he tried to explain to me why what I said wasn't quite right, why Muslims don't necessarily believe that. And I just asked a few basic questions, like, is the Quran the uncreated word of Allah? He said, yes, it is. Is Muhammad the perfect example? Yes, he is. Well, does the Quran mandate jihad? Well, yes, but you got to understand the interpretations. Sure, I do. So that's why I go to Islamic sources like 6th, 7th grade textbooks, books of Islamic law, Al-Azhar, the highest authority in Islamic jurisprudence, those kinds of things. The example of Prophet Muhammad in Bukhari Hadith. And so I asked him at one point, are you saying that apostasy and homosexuality are not crimes in Islam, punishable by death? And he surprised me when he said, no, absolutely, I'm not saying that. All of Islam agrees that apostates and homosexuals must be killed. Hey, folks in Iowa, did you hear that? Abshir Omar said that out loud out of his mouth. So essentially, he said exactly what ISIS and Al-Qaeda say are requirements in Islam. Think about that. So he's probably familiar, works with the Muslim Brotherhood, and this Muslim Brotherhood document, The Methodology of Dawah, written in 1989 by Shamim Siddiqui. And it's very interesting because you go to the section, this is the how to spread Sharia in the United States. And it talks about how to present. Call the people to the fold of Allah in pleasing words with wisdom, and argue with the addressees in a manner which is best. And then it quotes Quran chapter 16, verse 125. Next page, deal with people in a refined manner. And then it quotes Quran 29:46. Speak gently. And then it quotes Quran 20:44. Present the message in a respectable manner with dignity and patience. And then it quotes Quran 30:60. What's interesting is they literally teach, the Muslim Brotherhood teaches, that when you speak to non-Muslims, you must be very pleasant, very kind, quiet, gentle. So as we always say, the nicest guy in the room is generally the most dangerous guy in the room. And in fact, Abshir Omar, in speaking to me, was incredibly pleasant, but he was the leader of Hamas in Iowa. So I know that while he's pretending, or is actually sincerely being pleasant because it's a requirement in the Quran, I know that what his motives are. He wants to establish Sharia in the land. That's why he's a leader of a Hamas organization. That's their stated objective, Hamas being a part of the Muslim Brotherhood. So in review, number one, jihad is only warfare in Islam. It's the only legal definition. Number two, Muslims are obliged to be pleasant, speak to you in a gentle and refined manner. So when I hear people say, oh, but not my friend because he's really nice. Well, they're required to be. The Quran commands them to be. It also commands them to lie to you if they're Sharia adherent Muslims. And number three, we now have direct connections with CARE and this event in Des Moines and what came against us, the Southern Poverty Law Center, energizing the Hammer, their thugs in Antifa, domestic terrorists, and working with CARE necessarily because SPLC works directly with CARE on a daily basis at the local and national level. And we had a former president of CARE in the room trying to bring me directly to a place where I didn't contradict what they said. And yet I got the guy, the jihadi, Abshir Omar, to actually admit that it's a death penalty in Islam to be homosexual and to commit apostasy. So folks, I hope you learned something from this. I hope the truth is breaking through. And again, if somebody disagrees with what we're saying, understanding the threat's okay with that, just show us where we're factually incorrect in Islamic doctrine. And when a Muslim says there are thousands of interpretations, they're lying. Good night and God bless you.